Hi everyone, hope everyone's doing well. I am making this video so I can explain this assignment that was posted to Blackboard. The next assignment is going to be regarding testing and evaluation and the number of different tests that were that are on the PowerPoint that I just posted. That is not every single test that can be done because it would take probably forever to get through absolutely all different types of testing and evaluation for different athletes, but this is a really good overview of different type of strength tests, aerobic tests, sprint tests, agility, balance, flexibility. So we're going to use this lecture to jump off of with this assignment here. So the assignment that I'm going to have you submit to me next week is a two-parter. So the first part is going to be a video submission of 2 evaluation tests that I have assigned you down here. Okay, but we'll get to that. And then part 2 is going to be a summary submission, a written paper form of 5 evaluation tests for a given population. Again, I gave you the population down here, and you're going to pick 5 tests that you would evaluate for that athlete to see where their baseline fitness is, as well as what you would do to how you would administer it. Okay, so this is due a week from today, which is going to be due on 4/8, so next week. And here's the directions for part 1. With your assigned tests, you will demonstrate how these tests are performed via a video submission. Each test must be explained in detail. Now, normally, traditionally, the last few weeks and these past couple weeks in class, we would have been doing this in the lab, and you would have been running your peers through these tests and setting them up in the lab and explaining them as quote unquote the coach. But since obviously we need to make adjustments, this is how we're going to do it. So you've each been assigned two tests that you need to demonstrate and explain, and which these will all be posted up on Blackboard so everyone else can see them, okay? So what you must include in your videos: what is the test? So make sure you're talking about what is the test. So when you start off, you must say, okay, this is the yo-yo intermittent recovery test, and then explain how and when this test should be administered, and then examples of who benefits from this testing. So for example, what does this test tell the coaches and evaluators? Remember, we talked about reliability and validity. Is this the correct test that we should be applying to this athlete to give us a good baseline testing of where they are fitness-wise for their specific sport? You're going to explain any proper techniques involved. You're going to demonstrate the test. And you need full explanations and demonstrations, okay? So you have 3 options here, okay? 1, you can video record of yourself talking, going through the steps, all explanations and demonstrations of the test. 2, you can video record another individual who lives with you completing the test. So you can have someone go through the test and you're explaining it to the class or to the video as the person is going through the test. But it needs to make sure all components explain all components and have your person or whoever you are close with perform the test. Explain as the individual goes through the test, and it also can be a voiceover talking in the video as demonstrating. So for example, if you had your mom, dad, brother, sister, cousin, whomever go through the test, you can video the test on, silently. And then you can do a voiceover with either the screencast app, which is what I use, or you could use Panopto, which is on Blackboard. So whatever way you want to do the recording, you can, video the test silently and then do a voiceover, or you can explain it in real time as the person's going through the test. And lastly, you can record or find a video of the test being completed correctly and video and submit a voiceover explaining all components above. However, if you choose this option, it must be a reputable source and you must explain all components, no one else. So for example, if you found a really good video, but the person is explaining the video, that won't count. You would ultimately need someone who is going through the test where it's pretty much completely silent and you're the one doing the voiceover explaining the test specifically. That is if you can't find someone to record. Options A and B should be your top choices, either recording yourself or someone who is going through the test to explain the test. Okay, so I want to explain that I understand not everyone has proper equipment or access to equipment at the moment. So I get that. So for example, I have a couple of you, you're doing a 1 RM bench pull, 1 RM power clean. I understand you may not have squat racks and all this type of equipment that you would need that we would normally have in lab. So this is where I want you to be creative. So for example, as long as you're explaining the test correctly to me and demonstrating proper technique and demonstrations, that is all I'm really looking for, is that you understand the test and how would you administer this test. So for example, let's say you don't have a squat rack, but what could you do? You could actually use a broomstick to say this would be the bar and weight would be added on the bar and explain it. So this is your chance to be creative during this assignment. I'm not going to penalize you for creativity or for lack of having equipment, but just be creative with it, right? So for example, if you're doing an agility test and normally they have cones set up or something, let's say you don't have cones at home, that's fine. Use a rock, use something, to mark the area. As long as you're explaining the test correctly and doing the best you can to demonstrate it, I'm okay with that. Okay, now part 2. With the given population on this side, you're going to list and describe 5 evaluation tests that you would use to determine a fitness baseline, and you got to be detailed with your responses, okay? So to include in your answer, what is the sport and activity? So briefly describe the physical and metabolic demands of this population indoors, okay? So I need you to give me a brief overview of what that athlete is and what they typically do for physical activity and what are their metabolic demands. 2, you need to tell me, why did you choose those tests? You need to list the 5 tests and tell me why you chose those tests. How do they relate to the population being tested? Explain each one briefly on how it relates to the athlete and population. So for example, if you had someone who was a sprinter and you put in there, you're going to have them do a 3-mile test. Okay, well, why are you having them do that 3-mile test? As long as you have a justification for it, put that in there. But what test would be better for that athlete, okay? So in what order would you carry out these tests and why? Remember in our last online lecture of the Intro to Testing Administration, we talked about a specific ordering of tests based off of metabolic demands, right? So when you choose these tests, I would reference back to that PowerPoint in that chapter explaining why there's certain tests in certain order based off of the metabolic demand placed on the body. And lastly, how do these tests give you a good picture of baseline fitness and preparedness for the sport activity? So if you only had 5 tests to choose, why did you choose those 5 tests? Okay, and so down here you can see you all have your different athletes and or populations at hand. Okay, so back to this video one for a second, okay? So for example, let's say I don't have, tape or something or a mat. Let's go over here. So if I were doing this balance error test, right, and I had to explain to you all that you could test this on a firm surface and on a soft surface, as well as there's 3 leg stance positions. I would have to go over explain the double leg stance with you, the single leg stance with you, tandem stance, so 1 foot in front of the other, explain the scoring system and what the errors would be. And then right here, I would have to do the demonstration, right? So it looks like there's tape on a hard surface right here. If you don't have tape, use rulers, use something to make the square, for example, I would use, okay, to demonstrate, the 2 feet together, the tandem stance, and so forth. Now then when I'm doing on the soft surface, now what if I didn't have one of these standardized mats, which most likely most people don't have this at their house? What I would do is, I would probably take, just to demonstrate a soft surface, what I would do is, I have an ottoman couch cushion that I would put on the floor, and I would stand on that just to demonstrate, and I would explain that this would normally be a standardized pad, but this is what we're going to use for demonstration purposes, okay? So this is where you get to be creative. And again, I'm not going to penalize you for not having equipment. Just be creative, explain the test correctly, demonstrate it. Whether you're having someone else demonstrate it, you demonstrate it, or if you find a really good video, as long as someone else is not explaining this video. This has to be you demonstrating it, because normally in class, I would be having you coaching this through the rest of the class, through these tests in the lab. But unfortunately, like I said, we have to be creative. So this is what we're going to do. Okay, so you have a week to complete this. Now, make sure if you have any questions, please set up a Zoom meeting with me so we can go over the requirements for this assignment. I will also be assigning you all your major presentations by tomorrow. I am finalizing what that assignment's going to be. Okay, so normally it was going to be something totally different, but now we are going to switch gears, and I'm probably going to have you partner up for your final presentation as well. Okay? All right, thanks everyone. Email me and set up a meeting if you have questions regarding this assignment.